to the Boomerang podcast. I'm Matt.
And I'm Drew.
Today we have a very special guest, the one and only Ken Russo. Ken, welcome to the studio. Ken's one of the owners of Midas, a personal friend and mentor, and we want to get Ken's thoughts on, what's going on today, right? I think everybody kind of wants to know in this total you-know-what show, get some semblance.
Show?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Enjoying the show.
The FUD show. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yes.
Freaking a lot of people out.
You guys have done a real nice job, bringing people up to speed on certain things. And what do you guys want to talk about today?
Just, getting your thoughts kind of, I always like to ask people what they think is going to happen in the 2024 election. Mm-hmm. What you see playing out in the next couple. Maybe we'll start with that. What do you see happening in the next couple months in the financial system?
Well, I think we see a desperate, situation right now where the powers that be are kind of desperately by their fingertips and their fingernails holding on to what's going on. And obviously, I'm concerned about the financial system and the safety of our money. Like I was talking to you before, I think one of the biggest lies ever told is that our money is safe and that our money is strong. And I kind of wanted to touch a little bit on that today, especially for a lot of people that are listening, just to kind of give them a little bit of an update on what we see happening with our money and the banking system, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about that.
Well, Andrew and I, we interviewed Juan O'Savin a couple months ago, and Juan even said, you're not going to have $34 trillion of debt without consequences, right?
Right.
There's going to be a price that's paid for that, right? You can't just sustain that, and I think our system, with the printing press, with the Federal Reserve having unlimited money, right? The on-balance sheet, off-balance sheet, which no one sees the off-balance sheet. I wonder what that looks like.
Well,
$2 quadrillion.
Right.
What do you see the consequences? I mean, we saw a string of banks closing last year. Are we going to see more banks closing?
Well, I think what we're going to see happen is inevitable. In a way, it's already happened. The banks are insolvent. The stock market is a bubble. Not that we're giving financial advice at Midas Gold Group, but I'm concerned, and Drew, this is maybe something. Do you feel like the average American right now is doing what they can to kind of protect themselves from what's coming because of the enormous debt, because of the central bank and the other central banks of the world and what they're doing? Do you think the average American is doing what they should be doing so that, like Matt said, we're probably going to come to another side someday? Do you think people are going to be intact financially and doing what they can to protect themselves so that they could make it to that point?
My honest opinion is probably not. I would say we have people that are waking up, that are, seeing the writing on the wall, so to say. But for the every, day person, the average people that we talk to, our friends, people that we hang out in our circles, even people that know us, know exactly what we do, a lot of times when I talk to them, they're not convinced, right? Things might be getting, more pricey. They might have less money in their account. They might say, hey, this is an issue. But there are certain things I think that they're looking forward to. They hear like, oh, well, if we can just hold on for the next round of rate cuts, things are going to somehow get better. And so I don't think that they've taken it seriously and, with financially. They might admit, hey, things don't look so good. But I haven't seen quite the turn where people are like, yeah, I need to get part of this out of the system. I need to protect myself, whether it be real estate, gold, silver, whatever, something outside of the system to carry on to that next system. But I haven't seen the urgency yet. And I think when that urgency hits, what I worry about, especially for the people I care about, is it's going to be too little too late.
Right.
And it's like they're starting to hear about it. It used to be when me and Matt would talk to people, they were a little fringe. Like, oh yeah, that's wild. Mm-hmm. That's never going to happen, right? And then we have a couple banks, and all of a sudden I get all these text messages like, holy crap, you see that? Yes, but then my response, and I'm sure Matt's, is like, but what are you doing about it? Well, I don't know. And I think, we always say, hey, these banks are insolvent, they're going to close. But what they've really done is they've just closed a ton of their branches. Right, so you're not seeing Wells Fargo go under right now, but we are seeing them just close down 2,000 branches, right?
So are they out?
So they're just closing and restricting, right?
Right?
And it's just, I hear people say, man, it's weird. I couldn't pull out more than $3,000. I went to the bank today and I had to make an appointment for next Tuesday to do a wire, right? And they just are kind of accepting
And those
this.
are real stories.
Yeah.
I even had to do a transaction last week and take a fairly large amount of money out of the bank in cash because we were doing a liquidation and the client wanted cash. It took me 5 trips to 5 different branches.
You called me up that morning.
Yeah, I mean, do people realize that when we have a real life active bank crisis, which can come at any time, people are going to have zero chance, Matt, to get their money out of the bank. They're going to have zero chance to contact their banker or their broker or their advisor. And that's kind of how they should be looking at today, in my opinion. How could we prepare for what's coming financially? And
it's going to happen at a time of their choosing.
Right.
So I always look at the world in terms of, and I always talk about this as problem, reaction, solution. Right? So I think you have 2 factions on the solution side. So I think what the good guys are doing and the bad guys are doing is they know what the problem's going to be. They know the reaction they're going to get. It's just who's going to bring the solution. I think it's going to be the good guys that bring in the solution, but the problem's already occurred. And sure, will people get, reimbursed maybe some of their savings, some of their IRAs? Maybe.
Right.
Is that a chance you want to take?
Maybe, exactly.
Right.
Is that a chance?
Why would anyone want to take a chance with all of their assets connected to a dying system supported by a fake dying currency? That's the situation in reality that we are in.
And we're not like a doom and gloom group here. Like I'm really, you guys know me, I'm really positive about the future. Like I think when Trump comes back in, which he will, right? And to my understanding, right, we've heard this is it's going to be once this country goes into bankruptcy. I mean, who better to walk us through bankruptcy than somebody like Trump? Sure, will people be reimbursed? Yeah, maybe a portion, but if you have that dry powder, that gold, that silver that you can convert back to money, it probably will be money at that point. Think about the opportunities that are presented in businesses, markets, real estate, land, right? Stuff you can pick up at liquidation prices. So it's like, I think what we tell people is like, who cares what gold and silver do? It's just your bridge to get from this system to the new one intact and then be able to deploy that money when everybody else is tied up with, suing their banks, right? Go through 4 years of litigation to get back, 20% of your IRA money or 20% of your checking, your savings.
Right. And 40% of that goes to the attorney.
Right, exactly. Yeah. 40% goes to the fucking attorney.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I think it's just a weird psychology because what's happening is the stock market is melting up. Right. So people are seeing all-time highs and they're like, well, why would I ever pull anything out of this market that's going up? It's hard for them to do. But then you just got to realize that the value of the dollar is going down so much that, these assets going up, like unless you're holding an asset, you're just losing purchasing power.
Right.
When they say, hey, the rich just keep getting richer, well, when you own properties, you own assets, you don't care if inflation goes up 10% because your assets inflated 10%. But if you're in the middle class and, you're making rent or maybe you just have your mortgage, right? But everything you buy, all your food, your groceries, everything for your kids, like those are all more expensive. Yep. And your rate of pay is not increasing with the rate of inflation, right? So it's hard for the average person to go out and buy what's the average house now? $475,000?
It's crazy.
But you know what a nice solution is? You can buy something like gold and silver, a little bit more manageable, a little bit easier to do. It's something the average person should absolutely be doing. So I just think, there's a psychology to it where it's hard for people to pull money out when you look at the stock market going up to all-time highs. And
it's a fear of missing out, and that's the kind of tug of war. What I find very interesting is that the whole world is going through a de-dollarization. The central banks of China and the central banks of India and these central banks are buying gold.
Yeah, more than they ever have at like the highest rate ever.
And what's our central bank doing? They're buying our debt that these other
US
countries
treasuries.
don't. Right, that these countries don't want anymore.
Just to sustain a failed system.
Well, that's right. That's exactly correct. They're sustaining a failed system with more fake debt and more fake money, and that's exactly what's going on. And I'm just really hoping. Obviously, we're biased, but it's conviction that gold is going to be a lot better than a sick bank is. Gold is going to be a lot better than a sick dollar is, and gold is going to be a lot better ultimately than a sick political environment is, and it's sick. So the question is by that time that it could heal, and by the time that something could be done to clean things up, are you going to be able to stay financially intact and kind of distance yourself from that inevitable outcome before it can get better, just like you've been talking about?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to break through, if you want to break away from the deep state, right, that's what we're defeating right now. So we're defeating the deep state. This is a 2,000-year-old monolithic group of people that operate in bloodlines, right? The 13 bloodline, not a conspiracy theory. This is real, okay? This is what these. It's not what I believe. It's what these freaks believe, right? They think that because of their bloodlines, they are superior to you, right? And they have the right to control you. It's based on where they came from, right? It goes back to the days of Adam and Eve. It's bizarre. Again, not what we believe. This is what people like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama believe, okay? This is the system that Trump is quite literally taking down. If you want to get out of the system, unfortunately, it's not. They're not going to go quietly into it.
Well, I mean, they want to use our money to run their system. You know, you've mentioned that before.
Life energy.
Use our money, you know, to push their agendas. And what are they going to blame it on? You know, we need to save the world, aliens, the bad orange man. I mean, what's it going to be blamed on? So that outcome is inevitable. No matter how much money they can print or how much money they think they can borrow, it's not going to fix the problem. They just keep kicking the same problem down the road, kicking the can down the road, and in the meantime, everything is getting weaker. So
every fiat currency in the history of man has failed.
yeah, it's
And
inflation.
they all start being backed by
Valuation.
something, usually
Right.
metals, gold, and then they, just like in the Roman times, by the end their coins had very little actual silver, gold in them, right? They diluted their own metals.
Same thing.
That's what happens with
It's like
fiat.
it's
always
a
happens.
repeating pattern.
Right.
It's just a repeating pattern. So nothing that's going on today is really new. We've seen it before, but like you were mentioning before, well, it's the fear of missing out. My stock is doing well. My cryptocurrency is doing well. But where are we? You know, what's going to happen over the next few years? Where could you hide out in a safe asset? So like Matt's saying, when we come out of this better, and we will come out of this better someday. The question is
What's
we
your
have to
starting
hit
point?
rock.
What's your starting
I
point? Are you
think
starting
we
at
have
zero
to-
and starting over, or do you have something taken in that system to give you an advantage?
We're going to have to eventually hit rock bottom.
Sure.
And then who are they going to blame for rock bottom? I think we probably have a pretty good idea on who they're going to blame for rock bottom and blame, you know, everything on him. But we have to go through that process to come out on the other side. So,
And the good news, I don't think anybody's going to buy it. Like, go ahead and try to
well,
blame.
they're not.
Try to blame Mr. T. Go for it. Go for it. He's going to have his hands completely clean from this whole thing. And people are going to demand answers, and they're going to be pissed off. They're going to be out in the streets with pitchforks and torches, okay? And they're going to be looking for these people. These people will not.
Well,
And I will quote,
that's the kind of rock bottom that we're talking about.
these people will not be able to walk down a street safely. They will not be able to walk down a street. You mark my words. And people are going to look for accountability, and that's where I think it's going to be problem reaction, and then that's where Mr. T derails and brings in the solution. Right? I think he will be and I think we're going to go to constitutional mode. That's what I'm hearing. I mean,
That could play out, you know. I think for the average person who's listening to this, how do I protect my nest egg? You know, during that whole process, how do I protect my purchasing power during that whole process? And gold and silver has a tremendously long record of being able to do that for people. And I think, like I said, I think it's more important today based on the environment and the conditions than it's ever been.
Yeah. I mean, a 5,000-year track record, right? It's a pretty long receipt.
else. Yeah.
Yeah.
2024, what happens, Drew?
I know where you stand at. Maybe I'll take like a more optimistic view. And
I like it.
listen, I think Trump will win. You know, I think he's winning all the swing states. Now, I think he'll win if the election is just ran the way it should be. Do I think that they're going to try everything, the Democrats, the other side, you know, dark horses, whatever, are they going to try everything they can to keep him from winning? I mean, obviously, look at what's going on. I just read today they're trying to take his golf course in New York because he can't do the $454 million bond, right? What an absolute scam. So I think they would rather destroy the system than to hand it over to somebody else. And I'm just hopeful, and I'm really hoping that they're not able to destroy the system, although I think that's what they will try to do. They'd rather see it burn than hand it over to the Trump and,
100%.
you know, so.
What do you think?
I think the end part of that about the system burning and stuff, I think that's inevitably where we're probably headed. And obviously they're looking for a certain entity or person to blame. And I would not be surprised at all to blame the bad orange man as he's reelected, you know. So like I said, I'm very concerned about the safety of our money, the privacy of our money, the value of our money. I'm very concerned about the whole environment, the way things are right now. It's a desperation point right now, for what's going on, and I just want people to remain in a.
Well, just think about 2 of the 3 things you said. You said privacy and value, right?
Mhm.
Well, they've already taken the privacy part because now they're tracking things. If you use your Visa card to go buy
Right,
ammo,
and that's going to get worse.
Yeah, and
That's
then
not
the
gonna
value
improve.
part, they're devaluing our money, printing
Correct.
$1 trillion every 100 days, which
Correct.
is absurd, right? And then the last thing is you said the safety, and I think that's what they're coming after now, and that's what we're telling people about. Your money isn't safe in a bank, right? We all know what a bailout is because we went through it in the late 2007, 8, 9, 10, right? But people don't understand what a bail-in is, and they've done that in Spain, where they've actually taken everybody's deposit to keep the bank solvent.
Greece.
Right? So just imagine, people don't even understand here.
And
Just
they're not supposed to
imagine when they
do-
do that here in America.
They're
I
not
mean,
supposed to do bailouts anymore, according to Dodd-Frank. So a bail-in, I mean, the first bank that goes down, and actually a funny story I have real quick is IndyMac Bank back in 2007, 2008 in Pasadena, California failed. And I've had clients that have come in with certificates where the bank took 100,000 plus of their money and said, here's for the money that we confiscated and took, basically, this is what you get in return. And they've never, in the last 15 years, heard another peep regarding that money that disappeared. They're never going to get that money back. So that's the situation we're in, and I'm not quite sure if people realize that the risk is higher than ever today than it even was back then, because the amount of debt is so much bigger and there's been so much more borrowing. So the outcome eventually is going to, it's going to reflect that.
And final question, this is something we ask everybody that comes on the show. Michelle Obama, man or woman?
Big Mike,
What do you think?
broad shoulders,
I think he's got a good gig going.
Well,
I think
the good news is if she runs, I think Trump could just ask her to produce her birth certificate.
it'd be a good question, good place
He's
to
done
start.
that before.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I think that they make too much money giving speeches, and I think there's too many skeletons in the closet there, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Fair enough. Thanks for your
If that
insights.
answers your question or not.
Well, thank you for coming on, Ken. It's awesome to have you. We'll do it again. We'll have Ken on. Ken's one of the owners of Midas, and we love working with you. And great team effort over here.
Happy to be here. Nice to talk to everyone. Hope to do it again.
Anything you want to
Awesome.
add, Drew?
No, thanks Ken for coming in. Thanks guys for tuning in. And please leave us comments. Love to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, signing out.
Adios.
Cheers.